Head coach Kyle Shanahan spoke today in Phoenix, Arizona, and Trey Lance is still going to have a chance to become the 49ers starting quarterback in 2023. Keep it locked in here. We're going to talk about that next on 49ers Wrap with Jack Hammer. Hey, everybody, this is Jack Hammer with 49ers Wrap. Hope you guys are doing really good today. Want to come on and just talk a little bit about what Kyle Shanahan said during the second day of the owners' meetings down in Phoenix, Arizona. Give my take on that. Really I had 5 big takeaways from that. Want to talk about it. And the main thing, I've been hearing a lot today about Trey Lance and how he doesn't really have a chance. I'm going to tell you what he does, and I'm going to get into how he has a chance, what he's going to need to do if he's going to be able to take advantage of that chance, and we're going to get all into that right now. To start off, I just want to shout out a few folks who are over in the comments section. We got the Gabe Bubba Show 209 show who says, Jack, go Niners. Hey, Gabe, hope you're doing well. We also have Raphael 5629ers, big friend of the program, says, what's up, Jack and everyone? Hey, Raphael, hope you're doing well. We have also my cousin, Patobo Hammer, in the house. He says, let's go Niners. Jack, with always the great content, like and subscribe, everyone. Yes, please. Make sure you hit those like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification, all those fun things. MG says, evening, everyone. Evening, MG. Thanks for joining on board. If you guys have questions throughout this, you have comments, go ahead and make sure you put those in the comment section. Want to be able to address those as we go through. Try to make sure that it's as interactive as possible. Let's get this thing started. Yesterday it was John Lynch's chance to talk. We discussed that last night on the show. Today, Kyle Shanahan takes center stage. It was this morning. He spoke for about 25, 30 minutes with the media there at the owners' meetings in Phoenix. A lot of interesting things that he talked about, and I kind of boiled it down to 5 main points. And the first one, Brock Purdy earned the starting job for the 49ers. This is what Kyle Shanahan said today, that Brock Purdy earned the starting job with the way that he played. Let's just take a look at his comments real quick. I'll just kind of read them to you. You know, it would have been pretty easy if Brock was healthy. The way Brock played last year, he'd be the starter going into it. Trey had that position going into the year. We were really excited about that and think he would have had a hell of a year. He only got 1.25 games and he went out, which opened an opportunity for Jimmy. Jimmy got hurt and opened it up for Brock, and Brock played 8 games and won all of them and played at an extremely high level. We're excited to have that level of play at quarterback. So that's the whole takeaway when it comes to Brock Purdy. And if you watch the 49ers last season, how can you argue with what he said there? You look at what Brock Purdy did. He stepped into the starting lineup week 13, I believe it was, against the Miami Dolphins. Jimmy Garoppolo goes down with that fractured foot. In comes Brock Purdy. And all that he ended up doing was winning until he got knocked out of the game in the NFC Championship game of his own. He took over the starting job there, like I said. If you look at what he did, he completed 151 of 224 attempts, 1,877 yards, 16 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That's what he did over an 8-week span, including a quarter, only playing a quarter of the game in the NFC Championship game. Also, coming in late without having any preparation for the Miami game, he was able to go 151 of 224, just under 1,900 yards, 16 touchdowns. And then you add in, that's not it. It's not just 16 touchdowns for Brock Purdy. In his 8 games, once he took over for Jimmy Garoppolo, he actually accounted for a total of 18 touchdowns, 16 through the air, 2 on the ground, 18 total touchdowns, 3 interceptions for Brock Purdy once he stepped in. It's kind of hard to argue with that. And the other thing, when you look at what Brock Purdy was able to do, just look at the flow of the offense. The offense went up and down the field. on a regular basis. Were there some hiccups? Yeah, there were a couple of times when they struggled a little bit, but I think when we watched the way that the 49ers offense ran when Brock Purdy stepped into the starting lineup, it was fairly positive throughout. There were some hiccups here and there, like I said, but they moved up and down the field. And I've heard some comments about certain types of players, but we'll see what happens. Yes, Brock Purdy performed extremely well. Yes, he had the advantage of having Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle on the field with him. Remember, he did not have Deebo Samuel for, I believe, a game or two. I know for sure he didn't have Deebo Samuel in Seattle when he went up and beat the Seahawks in Seattle, which is something that the 49ers usually don't do. So Brock Purdy, he earned the right to be the guy that's the leader in the clubhouse. It didn't happen by mistake. So that's where they are. And the thing with Brock Purdy, you got to remember here, Brock Purdy isn't healthy. And Kyle Shanahan alluded to that. He said if Brock Purdy was healthy, it would be no question. But Brock Purdy isn't healthy. And Kyle Shanahan clarified that. And I thought Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were on the same page with this. They both have said, they said it in a little bit different way, but both of them, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, talking about how Brock Purdy, the next time that they'll get an update on him is going to be at 12 weeks. At that 12-week mark, which is 10 weeks from Thursday, that's when they expect to have their next update on where he stands. And that's where they're going to be able to get some idea in terms of what comes next for him. That's the point where he'll be able to start building up his throwing arm again, the UCL in that right arm. Is he going to be able to play during training camp? Is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be 8 months? These are the dates that Kyle Shanahan said today. He actually said, what he said was, there's a possibility that he's back for training camp. There's a possibility that he's back for week 1. At the latest, it's week 4. So we'll see how all this progresses for Brock Purdy. And that's what's going to open up the door. And there's going to be some questions here there's a couple of questions over in the comment section that I like that I'm going to get to, but I will get Black 59 Razor. I see the one that you had about with the practice. We'll get into that in a minute because that is an important one. As far as my thoughts on a possible trade regarding Lance, we're going to get into that. Let's go ahead and jump to the next one right now. And this is around Sam Darnold. What did the 49ers like in Sam Darnold that caused them to go out and sign him as their quarterback, come in and where he lands now with the 49ers? If you listen to what Kyle Shanahan said today, here's a little snippet of it. What he said was, Sam has a good skill set, as good a skill set as there is. That's why he went as the 3rd pick in the draft. When you study his play, you can see it. He hasn't always been in the best situations, which is tough for a quarterback. He has done some really good things in this league, hasn't won a ton of games, but he has been thrown into some situations where you're going to keep both teams in the game because you have to sling that ball for your team for it to have a chance to win. So you don't always have the best stats, but you see the ability. He always has had that ability since his first year in college when we started watching him. There's no reason he can't do it. Excited to get to know him as a person. I've always liked him as an athlete. I like how he throws. I like his athletic ability. I'm going to stop here for a second. I'm going to say, this sounds really familiar to something that I've heard him say before about another one of his quarterbacks, Trey Lance. Talked a lot about Trey Lance and about his skill set, how Trey Lance, when you turn on the film, you can see him do some really good things, how it's just a matter of time. It's the circumstances and all those types of things and how the ability shows up. When I turned on the film and watched Sam Darnold play with the Carolina Panthers, I see a guy who, if he was wearing a 49ers uniform when it was red, number 5, running those plays, it looked very similar to what the 49ers would expect from Trey Lance. A guy who moves really well. He's extremely athletic, gets out of the pocket really well on bootlegs, has the ability to run all of the stuff that Kyle Shanahan likes to run, the zone reads, the option stuff. He has the ability to play action, get out on the bootleg. has the ability to take some deep shots. Does he have some inaccuracy issues? Yes, those do pop up at times. He's not perfect. He's not as accurate as what we've seen from Brock Purdy. Well, Trey Lance hasn't been that either, but we'll get to that in a minute. But you look at what Darnold said, and like what Kyle Shanahan said, Darnold's been on some bad teams, and he's had a number of bad coaches throughout his career. There's a reason why Adam Gase is out of the NFL. The guy, you watch his film, you watch the Darnold film from his time in New York with the Jets, and it's hard to even understand what they're trying to accomplish. You have wide receivers running into each other, into the same area constantly. It's just a mess of an offense out there. And then Joe Brady, there's a reason he's no longer calling plays. These guys just, it takes a certain type of coach to be able to get the most out of players. That started happening for Sam Darnold last year with the Carolina Panthers after Steve Wilkes took over, and they made some adjustments to what they were doing, and he played better. Now, you look at what he did overall. He played 6 games last year for the Panthers. He was 4-2. Like I said, if you look at the style of plays that Carolina was using, a lot of play action, a lot of running, all stuff that you see with the 49ers right now. And there's a film breakdown that I did on Sunday here on the channel. Go ahead and look that up. It's 49ers film review, checking out Sam Darnold. It's all there. Went through every play in which I felt like he was really involved with it in terms of either it was a run or a pass. So you can check that out. Here on the channel, it's there for you to see. So please go ahead and when this show's over with, go check out the 49ers film review of Sam Darnold that I did. East Coast Red and Gold podcast. Hi, Jack. Hey, East Coast. How you doing? Hope you're doing well. Jesus says, why so much drama? That's a good one. I don't know. You would think that nobody's heard over the last 3 months that Brock Purdy's been injured and that Trey Lance is going to be in a competition. Trey Lance and Sam Darnold both talked about how much there's competition. I don't understand why somebody can help me here. At some point, somebody who is a Trey Lance head will be able to explain to me why it's such a problem to have Sam Darnold and Trey Lance compete, but we'll talk about that in a minute. I have a pretty good bit on that to discuss before we head out tonight. Number 3, trading Trey Lance isn't off the table for the 49ers. There's still a possibility that Trey Lance could be traded. It's one of those things where you look at trading Trey Lance and you look at where the 49ers are now. And I think you need to take a slight step back. If you look at Trey at this whole thing, like Kyle Shanahan says, feel good about the situation at quarterback where we drafted a guy we really wanted, Trey Lance. And we don't feel any different about him now than we did 3 years ago when we took him. It's just unfortunate that he hasn't gotten to play. He was going to play last year, and I think people were going to be very impressed with him, but he got hurt. That opened opportunities. And now we have another guy who can play very well. We have Sam Darnold who can play. And I hope all 3 of these guys are with us, but we'll listen to anything. That's not anything new for the 49ers. They talk about this all the time. We mentioned this a little bit last night. And what I would say to this is it's unlikely that any trade of Trey Lance is going to take place to or around the draft. Then certainly around Brock Purdy's recovery is the primary reason for that. It just doesn't make sense right now. San Francisco knows they need to insulate themselves at the quarterback position. Trading Lance, it just weakens them. That would leave them with just Sam Darnold. And I don't see them going with just Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy, especially if Purdy's not ready to go week 1. Remember now, Kyle Shanahan, by his own admission today, doesn't know if at this point if Purdy is going to be around week 1. So, you look at that, a lack of depth at that quarterback position. And then on top of that, you have to look at what the salary cap looks like for the 49ers. And trading Trey Lance at the draft, which is prior to June 1, doesn't make sense financially. The 49ers right now have Lance on the books for $9.3 million this season. If they trade him in the draft, that's a pre-June 1 trade, it would cost the 49ers about $11.1 million for a player who wouldn't even be on the team. That doesn't make sense. for especially when you have a 49ers team that's up tight against the cap because of all the top guys they have. In order to make it work, trading Trey Lance, the 49ers would have to push money into the future with another player. And not sure if that's what you want to do. If you're going to do those kind of things, I think you want to do it for a player that's going to be on your team. The more likely scenario, I think, if Lance does get traded, it comes later in the offseason. Includes a few conditions being hit. Number one, Brock Purdy needs to be healthy, and he needs to be returning. That's the first one. Number two, Sam Darnold needs to come in, and he needs to show that he can operate this offense in San Francisco better or to the same level as Lance. And the reason I say the same level is because Sam Darnold's cost is lower than that of Trey Lance. So even if they're on the same level, he's actually cheaper, and you can go in that direction. 49ers talked today about Kyle Shanahan talked today about the need to kind of keep that rookie salary on the books as long as possible to help them with the rest of their roster. I think that might have something to do with the reason why we are seeing so much talk about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is much less expensive than Trey Lance over the rest of this contract. Let's just put it this way. Brock Purdy's next 3 years are 1/3 of this season when it comes to the cap hit of Trey Lance. So that's another piece to this whole puzzle as we go through this. The other last one that they need is they need to have selected a rookie in the draft, or I would say maybe bring in another veteran, but I don't think so. It's going to be a rookie if they draft one. And if they do all of those things, then there's a possibility that the 49ers could trade Lance, and it would be somewhere probably later on in training camp around that time. A team needs a quarterback, and so they make the move. Or maybe they're able to slide that rookie onto the practice squad, and so they roll forward with Purdy and Lance and Darnold into the regular season, and then somebody goes down, and then the 49ers are able to cash in with a big trade of Trey Lance. I think that's the only way that it works. That in that situation, it is then a post-June 1 trade. That saves the 49ers $3.76 million against the salary cap. So moving Trey Lance after June 1 saves the 49ers money. Doing it prior costs them money. I don't see them wanting to spend more money. That's just not the way the 49ers do business. And so like as you can see, there's a lot of things that would have to happen, I think, before the 49ers get themselves to a position where they feel comfortable with trading Trey Lance. Don't think it's going to happen. I think if it does, it's not going to be until further on down the road. As Randall Riley points out, until Purdy is fully cleared, it would behoove the team to not entertain any trade offers. God forbid Purdy get an infection and is out indefinitely. Or, God forbid, a whole lot of different things happen. The people who say that the 49ers should trade Trey Lance right now are people that I wouldn't want to have it as my boss in a business, because they're the kind of people that it sounds to me like if you want to trade Trey Lance at this point, that's kind of like getting in a boat and having one oar, your rudder half broken, and you're hoping you're going to get down the river. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. I don't understand that. I think the 49ers are run better than people are giving them credit for when it comes to trading Trey Lance during the draft or around that time. Just don't see it happening. Lance and Darnold are going to compete. I don't see this as a surprise. Don't see this one as a surprise at all. It was pretty clear to me from the moment that the contract terms for Sam Darnold were announced that there was going to be a competition. If you've watched the 49ers and listened to what they've said since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch got here, heck, take it back to when Jim Harbaugh was the coach. There was going to be a competition. That's what they build themselves off. These are football guys who really believe that competition makes everybody better. I don't think the 49ers really like the fact that Lance didn't have a competition. There was nobody there to really compete with. There was nobody there to push him in camp last year. everybody around training camp knew going in that there was no way Nate Sudfeld was beating out Trey Lance. And there was no way that at that point Brock Purdy was going to jump both of them. Just like when they finally signed Jimmy Garoppolo later on at the end of training camp, it was still Trey Lance's team. That was clear. The 49ers had made their bed with Trey Lance. They were going to lie in it until they couldn't do it anymore. So in terms of this competition thing, though, I do want to clarify one thing. And I want to go ahead and I want to read Kyle Shanahan's comment to you, and then I'm going to make sure that I clarify it even more. He was asked about whether Lance and Darnold are going to compete, and he said, I don't know yet. He stopped. And he said, I do know. I expect both to get first-team reps, but I'd like to see them in phase 1. Then we'll get them on the field in phase 2. In OTAs, I expect them both to get reps with the first team, but we'll see how that goes. I think it's important here to note exactly what Kyle Shanahan said. Don't take just the whole that they're going to compete as a big overarching statement. According to what Kyle Shanahan said here, he limited a competition between Lance and Darnold to OTAs. That's totally different from training camp. Now, we're going to get into this one a little bit in a minute as well. But again, if you're a big Lance guy and you believe Lance is the best quarterback on this roster and the 49ers are blowing it by not having Lance be the number one guy, or you believe they're blowing it by having Lance and Darnold compete, why? I'm going to ask you why. If somebody can really explain to me why it's a problem that Lance competes with Sam Darnold. Now remember, Sam Darnold is the guy who, again, hasn't played very well. Most people that are high on quarterbacks not named Sam Darnold will point to the fact that Darnold struggled mightily in New York, that he struggled mightily at times in Carolina back in 2021. This is the guy who saw ghosts. He's not good. You've seen him play 55 games. He's not good. So what's the problem? Are you worried that Sam Darnold's going to win? What's the problem? I think I have some ideas on it. We'll get to that later on in the show. Ian Sharp says no starter wants to be a 3. Darnold likes his chances, obviously. This is kind of where I come into this. I listened to Sam Darnold during his introductory press conference. I was able to be on the Zoom call, listening to him talk, and my initial takeaway as soon as that was going on was, this is a guy who thinks he has a chance to compete. Sam Darnold is coming to San Francisco thinking he has a chance to compete. He's coming in thinking he's going to have an opportunity to start games. He said it in that introductory press conference. He said it on that opening Zoom. Sam Darnold talked about whether he's the backup or starting. He didn't even have to mention the starter thing. Taylor Heineke, who was signed recently by the Atlanta Falcons, when the question was posed to him out in Atlanta, he didn't mention anything about starting. Maybe they either coached him up better to make sure he didn't go that direction, or maybe he doesn't feel he has a real chance. I think that Sam Darnold came here thinking that he has a chance. I think Sam Darnold was told that he's going to have a chance to compete for the starting job. I don't see it as a problem. This is football. This isn't something where you get things handed to you. The guy who shows up and he performs the best wins. That's why Jimmy Ward wasn't the starting free safety for the 49ers last year. He went down with an injury. Tayshaun Gibson stepped in and took his job. Why can't it be the same case with Jimmy Garoppolo, with Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, or Brock Purdy? We don't know exactly what Sam Darnold's going to be here in San Francisco. We already talked about it. So I think this is going to be an interesting one. And I agree with what you're saying here too, Jesus. Sam can win the competition, but he may look awful in regular season games. Could be. That's a definite possibility. He could win the competition and then look awful in regular season games. Yeah, and if that happens, then you replace him, right? If that is if that does happen, then you replace him. It's not overly complicated, and let's try not to make it any more complicated than it needs to be. Now let's get to this one. How Lance can regain his starting job. I listened to what Kyle Shanahan said today, and I came away thinking that it's Brock Purdy's job to lose, but Brock Purdy can't compete right now. And so that puts the competition between Lance and Darnold to be the starter, to be the guy that maybe leads the 49ers into week 1 in wherever they play, because it hasn't been announced yet. So here's what Kyle Shanahan said today about Trey Lance. Now, we believe Trey can be that. When he says that, he's talking about what Brock Purdy was able to accomplish in those 8 games this year. I think he would have done it last year if he had stayed healthy. The good thing for him is with Brock being hurt, he has an opportunity to try to regain that. If you're a Trey Lance believer, if you believe that the 49ers' best chance to win a Super Bowl with Trey Lance, that is the sentence that you hang on to. The good thing for him, meaning Trey Lance, is with Brock being hurt, he has an opportunity to regain that. And that's all you want, is an opportunity. Whether you're Trey Lance, whether you're Jack Hammer trying to figure out how to make YouTube work for him, whether you're anybody in any walk of life trying to do the best you can, is you just want the opportunity. Trey Lance has the opportunity in front of him. It's also why we brought in Sam Darnold, says Kyle Shanahan. We can't be set for sure on Brock because you never know how the injury is going to go. Again, we can't be set for sure on Brock because you never know how the injury will go. We think it will go well. We're optimistic about it, but right now that's on hold, and that opens up an opportunity for Trey and Sam to come in and show us what they have. Again, Brock Purdy's not going to be around during OTAs. He is not going to be throwing the ball during the first 3 OTA practices. Hopefully for the 49ers, they hope that Brock Purdy will be able to start his throwing regimen around the time of minicamp, which is going to be on the 13th to 15th of June. So there's months of work that's going to be going on in Santa Clara in which Trey Lance is going to be the guy that gets the opportunity along with Sam Darnold. It's going to be harder for him to do, meaning Trey Lance. Brock played in 8 games. Trey had that job going into last season. And if he had played 8 games like Brock Purdy, no one else would have been able to come in and beat him out. But with Brock being hurt, it does give him the chance. Now, I don't know how Brock is going to come back or exactly when, so I don't have the exact answer. Right now, because he's hurt, it's nice to focus on Trey and Sam and see how they do in OTAs in leading into training camp. It's pretty straightforward here, folks. If you think Trey Lance should be the starting quarterback, if you think that the 49ers are making a mistake with Brock Purdy, if he's healthy and all that kind of stuff, if you don't believe in Brock Purdy being the real deal for the 49ers, but you believe it's Trey Lance, your head coach today said that the opportunity is there for Trey Lance. All you need to do is look at the way that Purdy executed the offense in his 8 starts. That set the bar that the 49ers expect Lance to reach. That's the bar. He can go above it or he can fall below it. But that's what they expect. They expect a guy that can move the offense up and down the field, get in the end zone. I heard a lot of excuses as to why Brock Purdy was so much better in his 8 starts from what Trey Lance had put on the field in 2021 and his couple of starts in 2022. Weather, not having Christian McCaffrey, not playing with George Kittle. All fair. Guess what, though? Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle are going to be on the field with the 49ers during training camp. If Trey Lance is able to win the job and get the start week 1 because Brock Purdy's not healthy, guess what? He's going to have Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle unless something bad happens, knock on wood. He needs to then go out and he needs to be able to show that he can operate the offense at the same level as Brock Purdy. And if he can't, guess what happens? it isn't that hard to figure out. Football is a simple game. You go out and you play better than the other man. That's how you take their job. I used the example earlier of Jimmy Ward. It's a perfect example. This is a guy that 49er fans loved. 49er fans still love him. He's a guy who, because of injury, missed some time, and he lost his job because the guy that got the opportunity outplayed him. Trey Lance, if he can come in and outplay Brock Purdy and what Purdy's done in the past, it's his job. That's all there is. And again, Sam Darnold, if you're worried about Sam Darnold, if you're a Trey Lance fan who believes that Sam Darnold isn't worth a darn, why are you worried? Should be a worry. All Trey Lance needs to do is come out and fulfill the potential that everybody's been talking about, myself included. It starts here. Consistency. Trey Lance needs to be consistent, not game to game, down to down, drive to drive. That's one of the reasons why they were so good with Brock Purdy. Forget about, don't give me the excuses of who he played with. Pay attention to the results, because he's going to have those guys on the field. And if he doesn't, he still needs to perform, because that's your job. You're an NFL quarterback. You're a professional quarterback. If you're good, the other thing that I heard about Brock Purdy from the partner that I usually work with on Tuesday nights is he didn't have the same guys around him. Well, let's see what he does. If he does, and he has those guys around him, if the performance isn't the same, you have your answers. Now, the other thing here, talked about consistency for Lance. That's one job. The second thing I think he really needs to work with is his underneath accuracy. He struggled with that. He has struggled with that in training camp last year. It's something I talked about quite a bit. Just the little check down throws, the easy throws, the throws that people talk about, used to call the Jimmy Gimmies. Those are the plays some of those are the things where Trey Lance struggled during training camp and early in last season. That's an area of the game that Trey Lance needs to improve on. So if you expect Trey Lance to be the man, show it. Show that you're more consistent. Show that you can do it down and down in and down out. Show that you can hit those easy throws. That's all you need to do. The other thing here to kind of think about too a little bit is Trey Lance is coming off a really rough injury, right? He's coming off a tough injury with that ankle. It's been a long road to get back. Is he going to be the same player in terms of his athleticism? We're going to find that out, and that's all partly playing into this. We know Trey Lance of the guy who we saw prior to the injury in Seattle, or in Santa Clara against Seattle. That's who we know of Trey Lance. We don't know if Trey Lance can come on the field and run the same way they did before. We don't know these things. So we'll see how that works out for him. Now, I'm going to go to my final take of the night. As far as my final take, this one goes back to the whole quarterback competition thing. I might have got myself into a little bit of hot water with some of the 49ers content creator community today, because I talked about how, Trey Lance this offseason, he stated that he is looking forward to competing. Trey Lance wants to compete. And you have a large contingent of 49ers content creation community who I believe, and if I'm wrong, they can tell me, believe that it's a problem that Trey Lance has to compete with Sam Darnold. I heard somebody talking today here on Twitter. I saw some conversations going on regarding Trey Lance and had the whole competition thing, and it's going to take reps away from Trey Lance. It just seems like there's this belief amongst some 49er fans that a quarterback competition between Trey Lance and Sam Darnold is somehow, some way going to impact negatively Trey Lance. One of those being taking reps away. Let's hit that one first. Will Trey Lance lose reps if he is in a quarterback competition with Sam Darnold? The answer to that is simply no, he won't. It's not the way the 49ers run their practices. Again, we're talking about OTA practices. But even if this goes into training camp, Trey Lance isn't going to lose reps to Sam Darnold. He might lose some snaps with the first group, but he's going to be getting those reps instead with the second group. Because the way that the 49ers run practice is group 1 takes 4 reps, then they go to the sideline. Group 2 steps in, they take 4 reps, they step to the sideline. And then group 3 usually comes in, runs 1 or 2, steps out, and then it's the 1s for 4, 2s for 4, 3s, take 2. That's the way that they do it. The only time that the number of reps differs between the 1s and the 2s is when they go to move the ball period. And the only reason at that point that they differ is because it depends on how well the quarterback and his offense operate. If the quarterback moves the ball quickly down the field and they score, or they get to whatever their desired outcome is, then it's quick. If it takes them some time, then it's more reps. Or if they go 3 and out, or those types of things. Kind of like what happens in a football game. So, no, Trey Lance will not be losing reps. That's my first piece of my final take. Number 2. Now, in terms of losing those first team reps, some of you might think that that's a problem. But Trey Lance losing reps with the first team, that's not really a problem. And let me ask you this. How many reps with the first team offense did Brock Purdy have prior to stepping in for Jimmy Garoppolo in Week 13 against Miami? Let me give you the response that Kyle Shanahan gave to us in the press room following the game when he was asked. Brock Purdy hasn't got any first team reps here. That's because the way that they run it is the starter gets all the reps once the season starts, and the backup, he might step in for 1 or 2, but most of the time they just are running the scout team. Brock Purdy stepped in against the Miami Dolphins with minimal snaps, and he played the way that he played, with minimal to no snaps with the first team offense. Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, they would be stepping into the same thing. So in terms of Trey Lance and it being a problem, again, with having to have a competition with Sam Darnold, I'm sorry, folks, it's not a problem. If Trey Lance is the best player, he's going to show it. Corey says, hey, Jack, what if Trey throws for 3,200 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions and we make the playoffs? I think that you know the answer to that, Corey. If he comes out and he plays like that and he throws 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and he's moving the offense and the 49ers make the playoffs, it's fantastic. That's fantastic. That would be what the 49ers would want to have happen. I don't understand. Maybe I don't understand the question. But if he comes out and Trey Lance can throw for that, and he can, move the ball up and down the field and get yards, score touchdowns, make the playoffs, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And this is my final take. I think Daniel says it just as well as I could have, and I've been trying to get this across throughout the entire night. It is simple right now for Trey Lance. It's time to put up or shut up. If you've watched my channel enough, you've heard me say more than once, when it comes to Trey Lance. Said this in 2021 when he was a rookie. I said it last year. I said it earlier this year on the Hammer and Nail show. It is Trey Lance, it's his responsibility to go out and take the job. That's why he wasn't the starting quarterback in 2021. They gave him an option. They gave him an opportunity. They fed him. Some things happened, but they gave him a chance to go out and take the job. He couldn't do it. Played really well in that game in week 17, though, but he couldn't take the job. Last year, he was the guy. And as Kyle Shanahan said, he was injured early. Now, because of an injury, he's been replaced by Brock Purdy, who is injured. And that injury to Brock Purdy allows Lance another opportunity to take the job. If Trey Lance wants to be the starting quarterback of the 49ers, he needs to take the job, and he needs to do like the coach said, and remember the Titans. He needs to leave no doubt. He needs to take it. He needs to make sure that everybody knows that he is the best quarterback on the field. If Trey Lance can do that, he will be the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. The rest of it's just talk, and it's going to be a lot of fun to have these conversations over the next few months. The draft coming up here in about a month from now, we'll be going through the draft. Shortly thereafter will be the start of OTAs for the 49ers, which will be my first chance to be able to see the team live in action and be able to let you guys know how Trey Lance is doing, how Sam Darnold's doing, maybe even a rookie quarterback that's been added to the mix, how they're doing. Then we'll from that just rolls right into training camp and actually mini camp, and then there's a little bit of a break before we get to training camp. But it's right around the corner, about 3 months away, about 4 months away still, really. Those 4 months are going to go quick. There's going to be a little bit of a lull right before training camp, but it's getting there. We're getting there, folks. It's going to be there. Draft's going to be around here before you know it. The potential's there for the 49ers. There's potential is there for Trey Lance. He needs to realize it. I want to say thanks to everybody who's taken the time to check this out. If you guys can do me a favor, do me a big favor. Hit that like button, and then also hit the subscribe button. If you're watching this show tonight and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. And when you do, also hit the little bell notification. That way you are notified every time the channel goes live so that you don't miss anything. And as my good buddy down here, Raphael5629er says, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. I appreciate everybody that takes the time to tune in. If you guys can do that, that'd be fantastic. Have a good rest of your evening. Take care, and we'll be talking to you soon.